Celia Drayton and Marlowe Kinsey were once inseparable, their bond forged through years of laughter, secrets, and trust. But when one vanished without a trace during a weekend retreat, the truth that unraveled shattered not only their friendship, but the entire town's sense of what evil really looks like. Celia Drayton and Marlowe Kinsey had been inseparable for nearly 2 decades. From the moment they met as quiet, curious girls at a summer camp tucked away in the Smoky Mountains, their bond had been instant and unshakable. Celia, a reserved and observant artist with a deep love for solitude, often found comfort in nature and her sketchbook. Marlowe, on the other hand, was bold and magnetic, with a passion for fashion, social settings, and attention. Despite their contrasting personalities, they understood each other in a way no one else could. Over time, their friendship became something sacred, an emotional safe haven where judgments didn't exist and secrets stayed buried. After camp, their lives went in opposite directions. Celia remained in her hometown of Windmere Hollow, a sleepy mountain community with less than 1,000 residents. She turned her love for art into a career, painting serene landscapes that she sold online and in a local gallery. She lived in a modest cabin nestled between pines and wildflowers, her days slow and peaceful. Marlowe, meanwhile, built a buzzing life in the city of Asheville. She managed a high-end boutique, attended endless social events, and was constantly surrounded by people. Yet, every summer without fail, Marlowe returned to Windmere Hollow for a long weekend with Celia, a tradition that had lasted 12 years. During those weekends, time seemed to freeze. They'd hike the old trails from their camp days, cook simple meals together, and stay up late, reminiscing about childhood. But that summer, something was different. When Marlowe arrived, she seemed distracted, her energy off. Her laughter, once loud and carefree, now felt forced. She carried herself with nervous urgency, always glancing at her phone or stepping outside to take private calls. Celia noticed, of course, but said nothing. She didn't pry. She had always believed that the strength of their friendship was rooted in space, giving each other room to breathe, to grow, and to keep pieces of their lives private when needed. Still, the visit was not without its moments of warmth. They went down to the lake and sat on the old wooden dock, feet dipping into the cold water. Celia gave Marlowe a charcoal portrait she had drawn of the two of them from a photo taken years ago. Marlowe had smiled, touched, and said she would frame it for her apartment. But later that evening, Celia noticed the sketch left on the porch bench, already smudged by dew. When she picked it up, her hands trembled slightly. That forgetfulness, small as it was, felt unfamiliar, almost careless. Celia couldn't shake the feeling that Marlowe was hiding something. She recalled the moment. She caught her best friend staring into the mirror with a blank expression, clutching her purse tightly, or how she had avoided eye contact when Celia brought up plans for their future, talk of shared vacations, collaborations, and dreams. Marlowe had shrugged them off, changing the subject quickly. The final night of the visit, Marlowe stood outside, on the back deck for almost an hour, alone in the dark, pacing and whispering into her phone. The next morning, she was gone before sunrise. She left a brief note on the kitchen table, scrawled hastily on the back of a grocery receipt. It simply said, "Thanks for everything. Talk soon." No hug goodbye, no breakfast shared, no final walk down the trail. Just a silence that hung, heavy, in the air. Celia sat at her kitchen table for a long time after reading the note. She stared out the window at the trees, trying to convince herself that Marlowe was just busy, maybe dealing with something personal, but in her chest a knot had begun to form. Something had ended. She just didn't know what yet. The weekend, which should have brought comfort and familiarity, had left her unsettled, her home suddenly colder than before. What Celia didn't know was that the worst was still to come. And when the truth surfaced, her life would be changed forever. 3 days had passed since Marlowe's visit, and Celia Drayton was still replaying the weekend over and over in her mind. The note, The early departure, the strange silences, it all haunted her, but she hadn't yet allowed herself to worry. That changed when Marlowe's mother called. Her voice was tight with panic. Marlowe hadn't returned calls or messages since leaving Windmere Hollow. Her co-workers hadn't seen her. She'd missed shifts at the boutique without notice, something completely out of character. Her apartment remained untouched, her mail piled up at the door. No charges had been made on her bank card. Her social media had gone silent. The police were contacted, and within 48 hours, Celia was speaking to 2 detectives at her cabin. She offered them tea, her hands trembling slightly as she poured the cups. They asked about Marlowe's visit, how long she stayed, what they did, whether there had been any tension. Celia told them everything she could remember. The hikes, the meals, the quiet moments that felt just a little too quiet. She admitted that something had seemed off with Marlowe, but she insisted they had parted on good terms. The officers took notes and thanked her for her time, but they didn't leave Windmere Hollow. They began asking questions around town. They spoke to the barista at the coffee shop where Marlowe had ordered a drink that weekend. They stopped by the general store, the gas station, and the hiking trail entrance. Then came the neighbour's story, a woman named Eileen who lived 3 cabins down. She claimed she had seen Marlowe in a heated argument with someone in the woods, behind Celia's home the evening before she left. Eileen wasn't sure who the other person was, but mentioned they seemed to be wearing black and had long dark hair. Suddenly, the investigation took a sharper tone. Celia was questioned again, this time more directly. Did Marlowe meet someone during her stay? Did Celia know anyone matching that vague description? Had they argued? Celia denied everything. She said Marlowe hadn't mentioned meeting anyone and that they hadn't fought, but the detectives seemed unconvinced. A few days later, officers returned with a warrant and began searching Celia's property. Her cabin was turned upside down. Boxes were emptied, drawers pulled out, and floorboards tapped. In the backyard, they examined the fire pit. There, they found half-burned remains of what appeared to be a notebook or journal. Most of the pages had been reduced to ash, but one fragment remained, faintly showing handwriting and a date from just a week prior. It was enough to raise suspicion. Along with the burned notebook, they recovered a piece of pink fabric wedged between rocks near the stream behind Celia's property. It resembled a scarf that Marlowe's mother later confirmed belonged to her daughter. It was stained with something dark. Police sent it for forensic testing. Meanwhile, Celia's phone and computer were seized for analysis. The media caught wind of the story. Headlines appeared online. Boutique manager vanishes after visiting friend in remote town, and best friend last to see missing woman, now a suspect. Celia's life shifted overnight. People she had known for years began avoiding her. Her art gallery suspended her displays. Clients stopped responding to her emails. Even the mail carrier now approached her door with hesitation. Despite the mounting pressure, Celia stuck to her version of events. She said she had no idea what had happened to Marlowe, no idea who she might have met or what might have gone wrong. But the evidence, or what looked like evidence, was starting to build against her. When the test results came back, things worsened. The fabric from the scarf was soaked in human blood. DNA confirmed it was Marlowe's. A forensic team combed through Celia's car and found a faint trace of blood on the trunk's carpet lining. Again, it matched Marlowe. Celia was brought in for a formal interrogation. She wasn't arrested, but she could feel the walls closing in. Every question felt loaded. Every pause felt like a trap. She repeated her story, but now even she felt the weight of her own uncertainty. Had Marlowe really left her cabin that morning? Had someone else followed them from the city, or was something darker buried within her memory? Something she couldn't or wouldn't admit. As the investigation deepened, Celia's life unraveled thread by thread. The friendship she once considered sacred was now the center of a growing mystery, and the truth, whatever it was, had vanished along with Marlowe Kinsey. The search for Marlowe Kinsey intensified. Flyers bearing her photo were stapled to trees, taped to storefront windows, and posted across every news platform in the region. Volunteers combed the forests surrounding Windmere Hollow, while drones hovered overhead, scanning dense brush and winding paths. Despite the growing scale of the operation, there were no new sightings, no phone activity, no signs of life. She had simply vanished. Meanwhile, Celia Drayton found herself increasingly isolated, watched, whispered about, and slowly transformed, from grieving friend to primary suspect in the eyes of the public. Police attention never shifted far from Celia. They returned with more questions, now focusing on inconsistencies. They pointed out gaps in her timeline, such as the unexplained hour during which she left her phone behind to take a walk alone on the evening of Marlowe's disappearance. They asked about the small cuts on her forearm she had passed off as bramble scratches. Celia explained again and again that she hadn't seen or heard anything that night except for the wind in the trees. But with each interview, her voice grew more strained. Then came the discovery that changed everything. A hiker, walking off-trail through a rarely used part of the forest, stumbled upon something partially buried beneath leaves and pine needles. It was a black tote bag, worn, muddy, and torn at the seams. Inside were several of Marlowe's personal belongings: her wallet, smeared with dirt, a broken phone with a cracked screen, and a necklace that her mother instantly recognized. But what drew the most attention was a folded letter tucked deep in a side pocket. The letter was written in Marlowe's unmistakable handwriting. It was addressed to C, and while fragmented by moisture and age, parts of it were legible. It appeared to reference a conflict, one rooted in a betrayal. She mentioned feeling unsafe, unsure about who to trust. There was mention of the secret of a decision she hadn't yet made. Investigators immediately began analyzing the note, hoping it would provide answers. But instead of clarity, it deepened the mystery. Celia was summoned once more. She was shown the letter, but claimed she had never seen it before. She was visibly shaken as she read the passages aloud. What secret? What conflict? Celia denied knowing anything about it, but the investigators weren't convinced. They pressed further, pointing out a discrepancy. Marlowe had referred to something hidden near the stones, a line that matched the area where the scarf had been found. Forensic teams returned to the stream bed behind Celia's cabin with more equipment. This time, they brought cadaver dogs and began digging. 2 feet beneath the soft earth, they uncovered a locked wooden box. Its hinges were rusted, its corners chipped, but inside were items that shattered the narrative. A set of photographs showed Celia and Marlowe in places Celia never mentioned. Urban rooftops, late-night bars, a hotel room with unfamiliar faces in the background. There was also a journal with entries written by Marlowe that revealed a darker side of their friendship. The pages told a story of manipulation, of jealousy masked as loyalty. Marlowe wrote of feeling watched, of Celia growing distant and possessive, especially after Marlowe announced she was moving to Paris with a new partner. She wrote about wanting to end the friendship, but being afraid of how Celia would react. These details flipped the public's perception. Speculation exploded. Was the visit to Windmere Hollow a final effort at closure? Had Marlowe intended to tell Celia in person that she was leaving for good? Was the discovery of the letter and the photos proof of tension that went far deeper than anyone had known? Despite all this, Celia wasn't charged. The evidence, though compelling, was still circumstantial. There was no body, no weapon, no eyewitness. But now, suspicion hung like a storm cloud. Every headline painted Celia as the jealous friend unable to let go. Still, Celia maintained her innocence. She claimed Marlowe had secrets she never shared, that someone else could have followed her, someone from the city, maybe connected to those shadowy figures in the background of the photos. But the world wasn't listening anymore. As the days stretched into weeks, the hope of finding Marlowe alive dwindled. The woods remained silent, and with each passing sunrise, the line between truth and suspicion grew more blurred. By the start of the 3rd week, the investigation into Marlowe Kinsey's disappearance had transformed into something darker. The case no longer felt like a hopeful search. It had become a slow unearthing of secrets no one wanted exposed. Celia Drayton, once the soft-spoken artist beloved in Windmere Hollow, now walked the streets like a ghost. Her silence, her refusal to admit anything beyond what she had already said, made people uneasy. The contents of the box found behind her cabin had circulated among authorities, and although not released publicly, rumours spread quickly. Whispers about the photographs, particularly one showing Marlowe crying while Celia appeared to be shouting, circulated on local forums. People who once greeted Celia with warm smiles now crossed the street to avoid her. Investigators intensified. Efforts to build a timeline, phone records, surveillance from gas stations, and even toll booth timestamps were reviewed. One camera, positioned at the far end of Route 12, the only road out of Windmere Hollow, recorded a blurry vehicle matching Celia's description the morning after Marlowe allegedly left. But what caught attention wasn't the car itself. It was the fact that the vehicle passed the same checkpoint twice within 3 hours. Police theorized that Celia may have driven away to dispose of something, or someone, and then returned to create an alibi. Yet no conclusive evidence surfaced to confirm this. It became clear that if Celia had done something to Marlowe, she had done it carefully, with chilling precision. Then came the unexpected break. A kayaker navigating the east bend of the river that bordered the county line discovered a piece of clothing snagged on a submerged tree. It was a denim jacket, faded and torn. When investigators retrieved it, they found 2 long blonde hairs clinging to the fabric, later confirmed to belong to Marlowe. Diving teams were sent into the river. The currents were strong, the water cold and murky. After 3 days of searching, they located something buried beneath silt and rock, a duffel bag weighed down with stones. Inside were more of Marlowe's belongings, a pair of sneakers, her driver's license, and a torn postcard from Paris, but no body. Still, this discovery shifted the investigation's tone. The theory of Marlowe simply walking away from her life was now completely ruled out. Foul play was confirmed. Celia was brought in again, this time for a full psychological evaluation. Experts questioned her about her history, her mental health, and her past relationships. Through it all, she remained oddly composed. But cracks began to form. She admitted to jealousy. She admitted to feeling abandoned when Marlowe talked about Paris. She even admitted that the weekend hadn't been entirely peaceful, that there had been moments of tension. Still, she insisted she didn't hurt Marlowe. She said she couldn't remember every detail, but that she had no part in whatever happened after Marlowe left. Her answers were vague, sometimes contradictory, but never outright confessions. Back at the cabin, new searches turned up something that sent shockwaves through the investigation. A shovel with fresh scratches on the blade, hidden beneath a pile of firewood. Traces of soil and plant matter clung to it. Forensic analysts confirmed it had been used recently, but the shovel was clean, too clean. It had clearly been washed. Even without a body, prosecutors began quietly building a case. They had motive, circumstantial evidence, and a disturbing psychological profile. Celia was no longer a grieving friend. She was the center of a chilling story of obsession, loss, and control. To the community, it now looked like Marlowe had tried to break free from a toxic friendship, only to meet a fate worse than silence. Online sleuths dissected every post Marlowe had made in the months leading up to her disappearance, highlighting cryptic captions, filtered smiles, and signs of growing distance from Celia. The media changed its tone too. No longer sympathetic, headlines now read, "Dark truth behind artist's cabin, mystery, and friendship turned fatal. Questions surround Celia Drayton." Meanwhile, Celia remained out on bail, confined to Windmere Hollow, awaiting what everyone knew was coming. Prosecutors were preparing charges. Her lawyer stayed quiet, advising against statements. But late one evening, something strange occurred. An anonymous package arrived at the police station. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. Its contents were simple. One video clip. It showed a figure walking through the forest, dragging something large wrapped in tarp. The timestamp matched the night Marlowe disappeared. The figure's face was obscured, but the walk, the build, and the long dark hair bore a haunting resemblance. To Celia, everything was about to change. The video footage from the anonymous flash drive sent the investigation into overdrive. For the first time, authorities had something resembling direct evidence, visual proof that someone, possibly Celia Drayton, had been deep in the forest, dragging what appeared to be a heavy object wrapped in a dark tarp. The silhouette's movements were slow, deliberate. Though the figure's face remained obscured, the outline bore enough resemblance to spark a formal indictment. Within days, Celia was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. The news sent a shockwave through Windmere Hollow. Reporters flooded the small town, their vans parked outside Celia's cabin. Neighbors watched in stunned silence as she was escorted from her home in handcuffs, her eyes vacant, her lips pressed into a pale line. Some believed justice was finally being served, while others whispered doubts, wondering if something deeper, stranger, was still hidden behind the surface. Prosecutors presented their case swiftly. They laid out a narrative built on jealousy, possessiveness, and control. They claimed Celia couldn't bear to lose Marlowe, especially not to another life, another city, another person. The weekend getaway was rebranded not as a peaceful retreat, but as a trap. The letter Marlowe had written, the hidden journal entries, the surveillance timestamps, and now the video footage were used to build a psychological profile of Celia as someone capable of quiet, calculated rage. Still, there was one major problem. Marlowe's body was never found. Without it, the defense had room to argue. Celia's lawyer claimed the footage was too blurry, the silhouette inconclusive. He emphasized the lack of forensic evidence directly tying Celia to a crime. No blood, no DNA, no physical remains. He pointed out the possibility of someone framing her, perhaps someone else jealous of their closeness, someone who had access to both women and knew how to plant doubt. Then came the second twist. While preparing for trial, a tech analyst noticed an inconsistency in the metadata of the flash drive. The timestamp had been altered. Further analysis revealed the footage had been doctored, the figure's height and gait manipulated using editing software. It wasn't raw footage. It had been intentionally modified to look like Celia. This revelation halted everything. The charges were suspended pending further investigation. The spotlight shifted from Celia back to the origin of the flash drive. Who had sent it, and why? Investigators turned to digital forensics, tracing the package's delivery and the flash drive's digital footprint. After weeks of digging, they found a match. Julian Varick, an ex-boyfriend of Marlowe's from 2 years earlier. He had a criminal record for cyberstalking and had once threatened to ruin her life after she ended their relationship. Further, investigation revealed Julian had been following both women online. He had created fake accounts, sent anonymous threats to Marlowe, and even tracked their visit to Windmere Hollow through geotagged photos Marlowe had shared before turning off her phone. The most chilling discovery was a folder on his computer, labeled Final Project, which contained the original video, the edited version, and multiple drafts. It became clear Julian had forged the footage to frame Celia, likely in a twisted effort to avenge the rejection he had never moved past. But Julian had gone further than digital manipulation. Cell tower data placed him within 20 miles of a Windmere Hollow. During the same weekend, Marlowe disappeared. Surveillance from a gas station showed him purchasing gloves, rope, and a folding knife. Police quickly issued a warrant for his arrest. Julian fled, triggering a multi-state manhunt. He was eventually captured in a rural town 3 hours away, hiding in a rented storage unit. Inside, authorities found a stained tarp, boots with river mud caked on the soles, and a journal filled with obsessive entries about Marlowe and Celia. He finally confessed. He admitted to luring Marlowe into the woods after overhearing a conversation between the two friends. He'd waited until Celia went on her walk, then approached Marlowe with fake concern. She tried to run, but he overpowered her. His plan had always been to make Celia look guilty. He thought if the world turned against her, Marlowe would be forgotten, and he'd have control over her legacy. After nearly 2 months of fear, anger, and speculation, the truth had finally surfaced. Marlowe's body was recovered near the riverbank. Beneath a layer of brush and rocks, Celia was cleared of all charges and released, but the damage was done. Her reputation, her peace, and her sense of safety were shattered. The story of Marlowe Kinsey's disappearance became one of the most disturbing cases in the region's history, not just because of the crime, but because of how easily a lie nearly destroyed an innocent person's life.